And welcome again to Theories of Reality. I'm Professor Borrowdale, and we're going to talk some more about the problem of evil today. So we started out talking about the design argument, and there's kind of an overlap between the design argument and the problem of evil. So the design argument says, look at the world around us. Look at the fitting of ends to means. Look how our Heavenly Father designed the world just so as a habitation for His creation. And then you look out at the world and you're like, imagine like the world without technology. It's drizzling all day today, right? Cold, windy. Imagine like having like no clothes and like being just plunked out in the middle of the forest today and trying to survive, right? You think in those terms, you're like, well, maybe the world isn't that hospitable a place. And then you think that Eugene is actually fairly hospitable compared to some other places you might be right now, like where there's snow on the ground, where there's freezing temperatures. There's other places that aren't too hospitable. And then you think, well, maybe I want to be like in a tropical rainforest or something like that. And then there's like all these horrible tropical diseases, malaria and all these poisonous insects, right? And snakes. And anybody here ever been to like a tropical rainforest and seen all? Yeah. So where were we at? Where'd you go?
Hawaii, Kauai.
Yeah, Hawaii's got some of the stuff. You see any snakes or like scary bugs or?
Yeah, I saw. I think it's called a banana spider. Lots of places in like Mexico and South America, especially South America. South America's ridiculous.
Yeah, and you have like the giant spiders, scorpions. If you're in the desert or so anywhere you go, pretty much there's going to be dangers to people. You have floods, and they have this thing about the mudslides in Southern California near Santa Barbara, where I used to live. Earthquakes, tornadoes, and so you think, well, if God's an intelligent designer, it seems like He could have done a better job, not designed a planet with such extremes of heat and cold, without earthquakes and volcanoes that destroy whatever human beings try to build to make their lives more hospitable. And then in the design of the human body, it's begins to break down when you're in your 20s, and then it's like the long, slow decline. And if you eat the things that taste really good, which is like lots of sugar and lots of fat, then you get just over you get through your prime reproductive years, and after that, nature doesn't give a damn about you, and your body starts to fall apart, gain weight, start losing your hair, everything goes downhill, and then it's an uphill battle to try to live as long as you can. And then, after you get a certain age and your bones get brittle and you start losing your teeth. And again, like most people in modern countries, the dentist is going to fix your teeth, and maybe you get a hip fracture or something like that. They can give you like a new hip. You get the arthritis and so all that stuff. People get the diabetes, and some of that is disease of affluence. So part of that maybe is self-inflicted. But it's also, just natural decline of aging and disease. People get cancer sometimes for no apparent reason. Sometimes there are risk factors that people engage in, but sometimes it's just, people just get it. It's just like a random thing. People get weird neurological diseases. And those are all like the design flaws, right? It's like the animal that's born with two heads, or, it's just random mutations, not even from any cause. I mean, people tend to think about mutations as being caused by toxins in their food, or like some industrial contamination, but people just have random mutations that from just the cosmic radiation. You get more cosmic radiation if you're like in a high altitude, like in the mountains in Colorado, than you would living next to a nuclear power plant. There's lots of stuff coming down, and the ozone, and all kinds of stuff hitting you all the time, and every once in a while you get a genetic mutation and you end up with some sort of disease, or you get it passed down from your parents, and once something gets started, it gets passed along, and sometimes it's like a recessive gene, or sometimes it's sort of dormant, and then it gets passed around, and all of a sudden the right combination of chromosomes that pops up and expresses itself, and you get hemophilia or Down syndrome or what have you. So, and this is all part of the design, right? So things don't seem like they're designed that well. Human beings have a lot of design flaws. And so Hume talks about these. He talks about like the world in general and then human beings in particular. And he talks about these four circumstances which cause most of the suffering of humanity, 4 causes of evil. And so, green, but I wanted black. There is no God.
Projector's out. Yeah, it's not even on.
Oh. Oh, the humanity. Okay, black. Here we go. But I got my tablet at a new angle. Let's see how this works. 4 causes of evil, and evil is cashed out in terms of human suffering. But there might be more to it, right? So there might be something like, I don't know, human degradation or something like that. Like people being mistreated when they might not really realize it or something. There's a debate about philosophy about whether suffering has to be experienced by the sufferer, or whether there are things besides physical pain or emotional anguish which can be a bad state. And some people have suggested like being degraded, even if it doesn't bother you emotionally, is sort of a bad thing that can happen to you. Or being dishonored, right? So as a separate evil from simply suffering. But at least it seems, at the very least, like the suffering of innocent people seems to be a bad thing, particularly if it serves no useful cause. So like suffering for a reason, so maybe going to the dentist to have your tooth filled might be a small pain now to put off later pain later, greater pain later. Exercising might be painful now, but it gives you long-term health. But then the question is like, why did God create a world where carrots taste okay, but cake tastes really delicious? And where a big slab of cooked meat is even better. And where broccoli is, it's all right. Maybe some people like it, some people don't. Brussels sprouts, people can take them or leave them. But who doesn't enjoy fried chicken or French fries or pizza, right? Like fat and sugar and big slabs of meat, that's delicious to almost everybody. And those are the things that, you would think if I were God, to quote Tom Sawyer, if I were God, I would make it so that carrots and broccoli and celery and Brussels sprouts would be the most delicious things in the world, and meat would taste like kale, right? And for the other the things that are bad for you, like fat and sugar would be terrible. It would be spicy food to me. I can't take the spicy food, so it would be like that, or anchovies or something like that. It just tastes terrible. Anyway, so Hume talked about this. We were talking this last time. Flaws, or defects in nature. And Hume compares the world to a house that's built by a shoddy fly-by-night contractor. The doors don't close right, cupboards are all misaligned. They creak when you open and close them. It's drafty. Nothing's so the idea is if somebody built a house like that, you're like, wow, this guy who built this house, he could have done a better job. And if the person says, well, it was it was the material he had to work with, well, why didn't he use different material? And so that the world is being compared to a shoddily built house that you would have a low opinion of the architect. And then he assumes the other possibility is that the architect is just he could do a better job, but he did a crappy job just because he doesn't like you, and because he wants you to live in a crappy house because you deserve it, or because he has something against you. So that's this idea that either God is incompetent or he's malevolent. So the defects in nature is one. And then the second thing he talks about, like, how does...
What if he's absent?
I suppose, maybe we can focus, I suppose we can focus on this for a minute, take a discussion, and we'll get to the other ones. So what if he's absent? What do you mean, like he's not paying attention?
And he just doesn't choose to be a part of this reality. He may have created it, but, I mean, I hate the story of Adam and Eve, though, because it sounds quite ridiculous, but, I mean, the whole idea is that the absence of good is evil. So if God chose to not be a part of human existence anymore because of certain actions and the way that we played out, then that could explain for why everything seems to be so disordered rather than ordered. Because there's no one to order it, or he doesn't choose to order it.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't see a purpose.
Yeah.
Do you think that possibly, like, his plan was, okay, we'll create the earth, we'll make it great, but it's up to the people, kind of like the free will thing, it's up to them to see how they treat it, how they take care of it, how they take care of themselves, and it's just all up to them, and I'm just gonna be there for when they're done to see if they did a good job or not.
Yeah, so that, like, the whole free will thing, it seems like it works. Maybe that might be explaining, like, human evil, like why God doesn't intervene and, like, take care of, like, all the, the criminals, like the people that do bad things. Every time everybody tells a lie, they don't get struck by lightning. Every time somebody, like, shoots up 7-Eleven, shoots up the 7-Eleven store and, and walks away with petty cash, like, we have to have police to catch people like that and protect society. Well, so that seems like it works. The free will thing works for that, but does it work for, like, I don't know, like mudslides and volcanoes and?
Well, obviously that stuff is like normal, it's natural, but if it does tend to be more of, kind of, like back to the nuclear plant, all that kind of thing, that is like the free will of humans, and so if you did create humans, and if you did create the nature, then wouldn't it be that, I don't know where I'm going with this, sorry, but I can just think if, like, I'm talking more of an environment of the people that are really the environment, like...
People are part of the environment. They were created by, just like volcanoes, earthquakes, and whatnot.
I'd say volcanoes aren't really evil, or earthquakes. Like, they'll destroy the bad people as the good people. Like, they're just
destroy.
They lack morality. They can't be evil.
Well, I think the idea is that so evil, when you say something is an evil, as opposed to like that it leaves aside whether it's God's malevolent or incompetent, but it's like it's bad that innocent people suffer.
So I mean, like,
and God could prevent it, but He doesn't.
Don't live next to a volcano. The evil.
Okay, well,
living next to a volcano.
So then the question is like, where are you going to live? Like you look in South America, you have these indigenous people. Like I'm thinking about Ecuador. Ecuador is like volcano cities. They're all around all the time. And most of the time they're dormant, and they sit dormant for like hundreds of years. It just looks like a mountain, and people say, yeah, it blew up one time. And then we see it starts to smoke, and they're like, I don't know what's going on with that. All of a sudden, boom, Mount St. Helens, right? Mount St. Helens sat there for, I don't know, like hundreds of years, maybe even thousands until it blew its stack.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not gonna like ultimately take it as like this volcano will never explode. Like I gotta take a risk. And that was the evil, making the bad risk of like deciding that it's not gonna blow in my lifetime. And I mean, like,
well, where are you gonna live where there's not danger though,
so
right?
I say, like, but I mean, at the same time, like, danger isn't evil because danger tends to make you stronger. So like, I would more think of it as how much of a balance I want to take. Yeah, like I live in Florida, like we get hurricanes and we get swamped out, and like we have ways to deal with it. So like, hurricanes, we love hurricanes. When we're like, oh my God, there's a Category 4, we're like, we got beer on the back porch until the tree comes through. Like, we enjoy it. It tends to be like more of a.
That seems like Stockholm syndrome or something like that. Like, yeah, God, bring it.
I hate hurricanes.
I mean, like, you guys got hit with I mean, I don't know, we get hit with hard hurricanes, and like besides the coastal that like really takes the brunt of the hurricane, like
Well,
that to me means like I'm not gonna live on the coast. I'm gonna go back to Central Florida, live in Orlando, where like I have like 45 minutes of buffer zone to like get this storm before it gets to me.
Well, maybe you just got lucky. I mean, it's like the hurricanes is really hard to predict their path when you look at them. They move around these really weird
That's why you
chaotic
live
ways.
inland. You stay on the coast, like it doesn't matter. Like you're that's the risk you're taking. Like it's gonna hit either in South Carolina and it's gonna slow down before it gets to me in New Jersey, or like it's just gonna skip both of us and just smash New York. Like that's just like kind of odds. It's like up to fate there. I mean, like if I wanted to just be safe from all of that extreme detriment, I'm not gonna live directly on the coast.
You have to live in the middle of the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you get like snow, you get blizzards.
Okay, but I build igloos and I don't care about the igloos and the snow because I'm warm in my igloo now.
It could be like a blizzard or something that comes in. It could wash out the roads and you can't get food.
I mean,
like
that's, that,
your
that
snow gets snowed in.
animals stock up ahead of time, so maybe I should stock up during the summer when I'm booming my crops. I'm gonna pile away, build my igloo, and I'm gonna wait. And like climate change is a little bit of a different story, but at the same time, like I participated in climate change. Like I decided to rearrange my own natural environment from what was safe to relocate for somewhere else. That's
But you have no
evil was
control
me.
over like what 7 billion other people are doing, assuming climate change is real.
I mean, to some degree, like, just because we decide that one person can't do something, like, we all back down and just, like, throw our hands and throw the towel. Like, it's not me. I'm not touching the towel, bro. It's not my fault the floor is dirty because, like, I'm not touching the towel. And, I mean, somebody can just go there and pick up the towel or tell everybody, everybody's going to, like, sweep a square inch of the stage before you leave the building because, like, y'all was screaming and sweating and spitting on the stage and the stage is dirty. So, like, I'm just gonna make you guys be responsible. Like, it's not hard. We're just afraid. And like, if we do too much to push other people into being responsible, they throw us to jail because like they think we're aggressive people. It's like people are just sheepish and afraid, and like it makes it hard for people to stand up and be leaders because then people just like, oh my God, I have a bruise. I want to sue you.
Well, on the climate change thing, though, it's just like people aren't. I think the people that oppose spending a bunch of money on climate change just think it's foolish because you could like shut down all industrial production in the U.S. tomorrow, and the models say that it's still going to cause these catastrophic effects. So it just
Shut down or
makes no
rewrite?
difference. You could
Make it
totally
free
so you could have
justice.
totally draconian controls that would hobble the economy, or even you could like if you could cut emissions to zero in the U.S. The emissions from China and India and other places would be enough to cause the effects
So
that
to me,
they're
it
talking
just seems
about.
like those shoes.
Take
Let's
long.
say we have the whole world just industrialized, it just shut down, and like we spent a whole year readjusting all of our factories to be like zero waste, all these solar and natural resources. Then like we still have
So there
to
was a
like
fantasy
we still
there.
have to survive. Yeah, we still have to survive the
I
effects.
would
That's
argue
the goal.
that,
We need to
yeah.
build ourselves to survive the oncoming change that we cause. Like.
Well,
Just
why do we
because it's
cause it
coming
though?
and
I
we
mean,
can't
assuming
afford it right
again,
now
it was-
doesn't mean we should just sit there like, oh, well, like technically the numbers are wrong, so I'm just gonna sit here and wait for the world to burn me instead of like, I'm gonna build a gigantic ice cube to live in, so that way when climate change comes and burns everything, like I got a buffer zone.
well, it depends. I mean, it depends on what it's like. A lot
Just
of
preparation there.
Yeah, the question is, are you preparing for a unicorn stampede, or are you preparing for something that's real? I mean, there's the
Yeah,
open
heat or
scientific
ice, I mean,
question.
like it's gonna go one of two ways. We're gonna either have super barren lands, and we're gonna have to learn how to like control an environment to grow a safe area. So we're gonna need to like start removing some soil and putting some soil away.
Well, let's
And do
bring
that
it back
with
to like the God question. Like, why is it? Why was there the Industrial Revolution to begin with? Why did we like? Why was all this pollution created? Was people just wanted to destroy the environment because they hate nature?
Well, God put an industrial seed in the apple. He told Adam and Eve not to
He put an industrial seed in the apple.
eat. Yeah.
I had not heard that. Although I did have a friend. As we were talking about this in my critical thinking class about like I had a guy. He was in my calculus class. He's like really smart, and he told me that the Adam's apple is when Adam ate the apple and the little piece got lodged in his throat, and that's why you have an Adam's apple. White men have an Adam's apple. I'm like, you just tell me that's an explanation from that story. He's like, no, that's why. That's really why. I don't know what to do. So like, wow. So it just, but coming back to this sort of whole idea of why industry at all? Well, It's because the world sucks. It's because it's a nasty, inhospitable place that's trying to kill you every day. Every day there's diseases that are trying to overwhelm your body and eat it from the inside out. Every day there's extremes of weather that would kill you if you were in your pampered, climate-controlled dwelling. And part of a civilization that keeps the food pipeline coming to the grocery stores, and it's all trucks, and it's all fossil fuels, and it's all factories making your iPhones and all the
hedonism
things.
is the problem here, like the need to like create this womb back outside of us. Like we don't want to deal with relatively simple things that like, okay, I got a cold, right? Like my tolerance is I'm getting a better and better immune system every time I get a cold and get over it. Like I become less vulnerable against those diseases and other diseases because I'm strengthening my immune system. So like, I wouldn't want to live in a world without diseases because then I'd just be super susceptible to any slight change in the environment. It would make me like more weaker by trying to take the evil world instead of using the evil world to make me stronger.
Well, why are there any diseases in the first place, though? That's the
Because they're
question.
just forms of life, and I mean some
Well, why you gotta create the cold virus, right? I mean,
to make you stronger so that when like
Why did
when
he
the
make-
temperature begins to drop and your immune system naturally begins to decline, like you just might get sick easier of your
There's a
vulnerable body.
roundabout way to make somebody stronger. You could have just said, okay, I'm making humans really fucking strong, you know?
Yeah, it's like God's omnipotent; He can do anything.
Does,
So why is it
does
just
all
like
evil? Does all evil?
God just wave His
not have
finger
good
and create
effect?
something?
So like every type of evil that exists shouldn't have any beneficial effect for anyone.
I mean, good and evil, I think, is just perspective.
Yeah, yeah, it's
There's
really hard to
nothing
define
that's
that, but-
Okay, well
ultimately
let's
good or
put that
evil.
aside. Whether like the suffering of some, let's put aside whether like like people being burned alive horribly by a volcano or drowned in a flash flood, whether that's evil or not, or we'll just say it's bad.
So I mean,
But it seems like it's bad,
the
right?
volcano that's burning
Which is
people
poor
is also
timing.
building a larger landmass for later people to live on. So it'll sustain more people on its land than it did now.
It's gonna like kill all the plants and it's like put
And
molten
make really
lava
fertile
over
ground.
everything.
You know, like it's gonna be a really good area for like place for life to regrow there now. And it'll have more room than it did before. It'll also be higher up in elevation and farther away from the waves to wash away. So it's like those natural forces, these hurricanes that come and like fuck shit up, also tend to like keep a balance for growth to continue on. So like they're not ultimately bad because they bring around positive effects.
I think the people in Haiti would beg to differ.
Well,
The
I
reason
mean,
why
maybe
Haiti
people in
is
Haiti
just
should build
screwed
stronger
up.
houses.
Well, you look at because they're poor because every time they try to build something, it gets knocked down every few years by these
I
tropical
mean, Florida was a
storms.
slave state, and there was a bunch of slaves.
That-
And we have like a bunch of hurricane-proof windows and like.
I think this
The
really
slavery though has nothing to do with why Haiti's a basket case country.
more just like Florida
It's
was
like
known as the
Marxism
richest
plus
state.
hurricanes equals Haiti.
And we got capitalism plus hurricanes, and we have like Disney World.
That's exactly, there you go. But
So it's not,
But,
it's
you know,
not the hurricane's fault.
Disney
It's
World's
the
just been
Marxists'
lucky though,
fault.
right?
It's
There's-
human, so it's not nature's negativity, it's human
if
negativity.
if Disneyland was ground zero for a hurricane, it would it would be destroyed just like anything else.
I mean, things would get fucked up and they would close the park down for like a month because of safety issues and they got
Yeah.
to keep everything clean, but like a lot of that stuff's still gonna stand.
I think this really
It's
depends
not
on
easy.
time. So, let's say you do encounter something poor in your life and it causes you to have heartache, right? Something goes wrong. But that heartache could, in a different time, like in a longer stretch of time right now, it's an awful phase for you,
Yeah.
but it's opened up the gateway for something more positive in your life. So, I mean, that's it's impossible to even understand whether that's true or not. But I'm saying that the possibilities of evil producing good are there.
Yeah.
Why not just produce the good and leave the evil aside?
Because maybe that evil is necessary for good.
It's just, why it's
But if you're an omnipotent being, why can't you create the good directly? Why would you need the evil?
If everything was perfect, would you appreciate it as much as...
Would you even know? it's
Sure,
perfect?
like, I mean,
Would
you
you,
have
would
to-
you know? You wouldn't know. If imperfections
Well, I mean,
didn't exist, you wouldn't know.
But it
what the
is,
difference was.
okay, so suppose in theory that okay, so that I ran into this guy the other day, right? He's like standing at a street corner and he's got this 2x4. He's got it and he's going whack, whack on the side of his head.
I'd give him some money. That's
I'm
pretty
like,
funny.
what? He's like, I'm like, sir, why are you hitting yourself over the head repeatedly with a 2x4? And he turns to me and says, because when I stop, it feels so good. That's crazy talk, right? So you can't say that because it feels so good when you stop hitting yourself over the head, that therefore, like, hitting yourself over the head is a good thing, because when you get the relief of not being hit over the head, you appreciate how good it feels not to be hit on the head.
So to throw a mirror
Or to hit
in there,
yourself in the
people
head.
dying in Haiti isn't an evil thing.
Let's say that again.
To like throw a mirror right there, a little dark mirror, like the people who are dying in Haiti seems to like not necessarily to know that that was an evil act.
I'm not sure I follow you.
Well, I mean, like at the same time, we bring awareness to Haiti, and we're gonna have more funds, and like people are gonna have more.
Yeah.
We're gonna get more after the fact that they got destroyed by the hurricane than they would have had if they never had the hurricane continue to try to survive on. We're gonna get more aid, more people.
Yeah.
We're gonna have better structures built now. So like the fact that they keep getting their shit knocked down means they keep getting up and building bigger, and more people come and help them out. So I mean, technically,
Some people just never get noticed.
That's a lot of
gotta
wasted
say that.
energy, right? I mean, you can like keep on building
it
and
is a lot of
rebuilding
wasted
something
energy.
that's
It shows
like
the
crappy.
infallibility of the human logic to not go there ahead of time. We want cures instead of prevention, because cures make us more money.
I don't.
Generating
That sounds
cures
conspiracy.
and then like
That sounds
maintaining the cure.
conspiratorial.
Would you say evil can bring people together a majority of the time?
It gives people cause to
Like,
band together to
it
Like
gives,
you like
it
looters?
gives people cause to fight against.
yeah.
Well, like, you know,
Together.
like, yeah, like if there's a hurricane, like you get your friends together and go like, steal stuff because the police are busy, right?
Or
That brings
partying in
people
your house,
together.
there's no school for like a week.
Right.
Because you might die playing in a hurricane.
I think for free will to exist, evil must exist.
Okay, we'll come back to free will, because that's like one of the major defenses. Let me hit the rest of these four causes of evil. So let's see, defects of nature. Using natural law instead of divine intervention. So natural laws, I guess, versus divine intervention, meaning like micromanaging things. So intervention, I guess you'd say, oops, that should be a T. Like sort of like doing little miracles all the time. Miracles. Occasionally, people say God does miracles, but usually he doesn't. Like usually, sometimes there'll be a person that says, oh, thank the Lord, he saved me from that fiery plane crash. Not like the other passengers that died horribly, right? And were burned alive by jet fuel, or like got, sucked out of the windows or whatever. But me, God decided to save me. It wasn't just a coincidence. So, and so you have like accounts of people that say that God does miracles. But most of the time it's like the law of gravity that says like if the plane's engines all, crap out, the plane goes down into the, gravity pulls the plane down or to the ground, and people die from the impact. So, and gravity doesn't care whether you're Charles Manson or Mother Teresa, right? You step off a cliff, you're going down, and you're going to be crushed in the rocks below. And so Hume says this is a feature of natural law, that God sets up these invariable rules that means that it doesn't matter whether you're good or a good person or a bad person. If there's some random happenstance, you're gonna suffer the consequences. And it doesn't matter how virtuous you are, you can suffer from nature, right? So people, morally good people get cancer. Morally good people end up dying in storms or other natural disasters.
I don't think there's anybody that is truly perfectly morally good, though.
Well, I suppose then that comes back to the God's just punishing people for their sins, and that's why every time there's an earthquake,
I wouldn't even necessarily say he's punishing. I would just say that
they deserve
everybody
it.
lacks perfection. Everybody has committed a sin. Everybody has done wrong. It doesn't matter whether you're Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa, I'm sure, has done something wrong in her life. So you could say that any form of evil is enough to dictate whether you don't get to exist for eternity.
So you think like if somebody did something bad, like you think about like if something bad happens to some I don't know, like Stalin. Stalin, people think that he was probably poisoned at the end of his life because he's trying to start a nuclear war.
Yeah. Good guy.
And most people think that's awesome and people think it's awesome that Saddam Hussein was hanged, right? So and that Stalin was poisoned, but they think it's sad when Princess Di dies in an automobile accident.
I think it's because
Those are bad
it's
outcomes,
media,
right?
It's media.
Right, but those are
we
bad
all know
outcomes.
what Stalin did.
Right.
We all are available to that information of his evil.
Sure.
We don't know anything wrong about the princess because,
Well, she was like a big philanthropist.
Yeah.
She like put a lot of work
but I'm
into.
saying all the good was advertised. It wasn't the bad that was advertised. But that's different for everyone.
But it's a
Some-
balance, right? Like they're people
Yeah,
are
it's
balancing
always
it.
a balance, but I'm
Stalin
saying-
was mostly bad. I mean, Stalin probably had his good points too.
I'm saying that because there's a balance,
Yeah.
that's why evil exists. Because there's a balance.
But now you're pushing some kind of like Taoist type thing, which seems to go against like the original sin thing you're pushing earlier. There's this balance of good and evil.
So then, like,
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying there's a balance of good and
Okay.
evil. I'm
What do
saying that there is both of them that exist, and that's what gets rid of the idea.
Yeah,
of
but it's
perfection.
bad when like Stalin, who's like monsters, like kill 50 million people, starve people to death, put people in gulags, just a horrible person. When he dies, it's great. It's great. He deserved it. When let's say Princess Di or Mother Teresa, who devoted their lives to trying to help people, particularly the most vulnerable people and people living in dire poverty, or kids who might walk into a landmine in some former war zone. That's what Princess Di did. That those two people are good, and it doesn't mean that they're perfect. I mean, Princess Di is her marital woes made the tabloids.
I jump out
She wasn't, and maybe she's like did some things that weren't good, but she also did a lot of good. So it's like a balance. So if a person who devotes their lives to helping people, even though they're not perfect, you think it's tragic when they die, but it's great when a bad person dies.
I would say both Gandhi and Hitler were great, and their deaths were great. Gandhi died and made so many people feel so bad that such a beautiful person was gone that they kind of like embodied a part of who Gandhi was to keep him alive. So like his death spread, like his concept a little bit further than people when he was alive. Because like, oh, he's alive, this guy is doing this great thing. So it kind of took responsibility away from them to share and partake in what he was trying to do. They kind of left the burden up to him. So when he died, it's like, well, this guy is gone. Who's left to do it? He's only a memory. Let's spread his memory around. You're kind of spreading his concept around. Hitler, I mean, it's great that Hitler died, but for it to be great that Hitler died, it's also great that Hitler was alive, not because he killed all those Jews, but because he, like, in a sense, predestined the 21st century by causing all of these, like, wartime experiments that come about that gave us the modern world, like X-rays and the medical records that we have, and like,
Well,
so
maybe
he did his evil propelled us into a technological future. So I mean, like it's both.
So was it a mistake to put Gandhi's assassin in prison? Should they give him an award, humanitarian award?
I mean,
I think
like
it depends on social construct and like how society pictures evil and good.
Now you're saying good and evil is sort of subjective or something
they
like
definitely
that.
are.
Yeah.
But you're arguing how like those guys you're actually arguing that Hitler and Stalin were good, even though they seem like they're bad.
I mean,
That's a
like,
different idea
I'm saying
than
that
that's
they're
subjective.
both. I'm saying that everyone is both.
This class wouldn't be the way it
I
is
mean,
if we
and then
Yeah, but it
we
doesn't matter the
use
degree.
actions and we give certain actions values as humans. So murder is pretty high up on that value of evil, but stealing is it's a lot lower. Or just like punches someone in the arm, not super hard. That's a lot lower on the evil scale. But where do those scales come from? It comes from society building them through interactions with other people. So I mean, in a sense, it is subjective.
I don't think that it follows from what you said that it's subjective. I mean, people do assign values to things. The question is whether those values they assign are purely like irrational choices they make, or whether they're actually based on something real.
on the real society
Is
that
it-
they built. I mean, like outside of the individual construct and the constructs that individuals collectively construct, like there's no actual measure for good or evil. Like there's no natural good or evil. There's just perspective of what we decide is good or evil in relation to a specific reference frame.
I
And then
think
that's why we have all
a-
these debates
that's
about
an
unsupported
abortion and
those
all
are
these other
unsupported
things.
assumptions.
The lightning strike that like strikes a tree and sets the Sahara on fire like is neither good nor bad. It's bad. There's no more Saharan prairie grass, but like the lightning would have struck anything equally as high at that moment. Like it wasn't its decision. It didn't want to intentionally burn it down. Like it was impartial.
Yeah,
Like
but why
fire,
that
in
happen?
the
It's
case
because
of
God
fire.
let it happen.
I mean, like
And
fire
God
burning
designed a
house
world
down,
where that happens
it's
all the
horrible.
time.
it cooks
Right.
your food, it's great.
I'm not saying that the lightning bolt knows it's doing that. I'm saying that if God allows it to happen, and it leads to like somebody's house burning down, then it's God's fault.
Well, maybe God wanted you
And
to
God's
not
a
have your
bad,
house.
these are bad.
God's like, your house sucks.
Well, either God's like
Fuck your
malevolent,
house.
right? He's like he's punishing you, and then there's a question, I suppose, of whether you deserve it or not. By the way, that assumes morality. That you can't say morality is subjective and sort of like flip flop back and forth about morality is real when it serves my argument here, but it's unreal when it serves my argument here. So so either God's a bastard and he's punishing people who don't deserve it, or it seems like he's incompetent, doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and
Well, he's
created
the
this
bastard
crappy
when he created
world
himself.
where people suffer every day for no good reason. Yeah.
Another argument could be that he's doing that stuff, like, not like dying, but if you actually like survive most things to make you stronger. So like if somebody gets cancer and they blame God, but really it could be like, okay, like I have this, I'm gonna serve it, and if I survive, it's just gonna make me a stronger person every day.
Well, why didn't God make him a stronger person, like just through an act of like a miracle? Like,
Because we were all perfect and all super strong. Like, I think, especially if we were all perfect, like, we wouldn't die. And then there would be no room for anybody else. And so we would just,
well,
like,
why is there only room for so many people on the earth? This is a design
if
flaw.
a bigger planet, then there'd be too much gravity, and then we wouldn't be able to, like...
Who created the laws of gravity?
I mean, it seems relative to every, like, little piece, like, there's no way I can turn the thing the size of Jupiter with its mass into, like, the same gravity of Earth, unless I remove some mass, and then stretch it out to maintain the size, like...
See, that's why we're in a simulation. There's someone just looking down
Okay,
at us, just
no
causing
simulation
earthquakes
talk,
and
no
just having a good
simulation.
old time.
There's actually a bit where he talks about this whole concept of like, well, what about, if that was the case, then the gravity wouldn't work. So this is, where's this here? Now, so here's, this is on page 138. There are four circumstances on which depend all or the greatest part of the ills that molest sensible creatures. And then near the bottom, like 4 lines to the top, he says, now this I assert to be the case with regard to all the causes of evil and the circumstances on which it depends. None of them appear to human reason in the least degree necessary or unavoidable. So the idea is that you could imagine these things not being around. He talks about the defects of nature. Let's see. I'm looking for this bit of pain. Sorry, 139. Might not other particular volitions remedy this inconvenience? In other words, might not the deity exterminate all ill, whether it be found and produce all good without any preparation or long progress of causes and effects? This is talking about the capacity to feel pain. I'm looking for another passage here where he talks about, look, if you say, this is actually, I'm looking, this is the house analogy. This is on 138. So think about the world as being like a house. This is 138, bottom paragraph on the left. I think I mentioned this last time. Did I show you a house or a palace where there was not one apartment convenient or agreeable, where the windows, doors, fire passages, stairs, and the whole common of the building were a source of noise, confusion, fatigue, darkness, and the extremes of heat and cold? You would certainly blame the contrivance without any further examination. The architect would in vain display his subtlety and prove to you that if this door or that window were altered, greater ills will ensue. And it seems like that's the argument you guys are making, that, if you did that, this even worse thing would happen. And that's why God allows this bad thing. And then, so you're basically making excuses
It's all
for the
motivation
architect.
more so.
Well, let me finish this. So he says, what he says may be strictly true. The alteration of one particular, while the other parts of the building remain, may only augment the inconveniences. So in other words, he says, well, if I fix this door here to make it so it didn't creak and make all this noise, that would destabilize this column here, and the whole house would fall down. But who designed the crappy house in the first place with the creaky door that's resting on this pillar that's holding the whole damn thing up, right? This is like you're saying, like, what if we live forever and there was no death? Well, then there'd be overpopulation. Then who designed the reproductive system? Who made Earth like the certain size it is that only holds so many people? Who designed the ecosystem and the nutrition system and all the things? Who made climate change possible, if there is such a thing, right? This is all, it's all part of the design. And so it's true that if you adjusted one part of the design, like got rid of death, that would have all these other consequences, that there'd be overpopulation. But the whole system, which makes overpopulation possible if you got rid of death, is a series of interdependent structures that God set up, right? So, and either he set up for, he set up for a reason, or, and this is like, so either this is the best he can do, or he set up to torture us, right? One or the other. Like, he either, or he doesn't give a damn, right? So, God's either, I think Hume says, yeah, well, Hume says incompetent or malevolent, and I think he leaves out apathetic, so that might be, Hume might just say that's part of malevolent.
Yeah, like Epicurus is God willing to prevent evil and not able? Then he is not omnipotent.
Yeah.
Is he able but not willing? Then he's malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? And is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God? So like, it's like on the third one, whence cometh evil? Like, if we're gonna say God exists, then we're gonna say that there's nothing that's evil. Everything is neither good nor evil. It's just God's creation, and like it's
just the function.
It all has a
it's
reason
the function of creation
that you have to figure out or die in vain.
Well, then why believe in God is the question then.
Exactly.
Like, it seems like the
I
problem
think
of
we
evil.
like to choose to believe that something
we don't
is
want
better,
to take
something exists
responsibility
that's better.
for our own
Okay,
species.
well, so this is
That's
an
it.
argument against God's existence. You already been praised the conclusion, so maybe this argument's not speaking to you. The problem of evil is a problem for Western theism, who believes that, and Western theism believes that God is all-powerful and also that he is morally good. Now, if you say moral, there is no such thing as moral goodness. It's just a subjective judgment. It's just like what people like and don't like. Then, yeah, it's a premise of the argument, right? So that's a separate argument. And I think if you have that, belief, you've got more problems than just not believing in God, I would say. And I would never turn my back on you were we in any sort of situation whatsoever, because I wouldn't trust you, because you might stab me in the back.
Well, that doesn't mean that we don't understand the benefits of having them.
Well, but when it's not beneficial to you, then you'll just, you might do something that would harm me, right? It's people that believe in morality and principles are,
Yeah, but I think that
are
comes
good to
with,
have
like,
around.
I mean, I would say Nietzsche's and
Intent.
moralists are good to have around too, though.
What's that?
Wouldn't Nietzsche's and moralists also be good to have around? They're more likely to allow you to abuse them because that makes you feel stronger. They have enough power to make you feel stronger, and they're immoral. Wouldn't you say that? So I mean, like, I don't know. I would.
I'd say, like, you're just one person. It's good to be around people that believe in basic, like, morality and human rights and respect the rights of others, than people who are out to gain the most power and resources that they can and don't care who they have to hurt to get it. Those aren't good people to have friends.
Those don't entirely lock together on that opposite side. Like, people who want power aren't always like.
Oh, what's the point of power?
All right, I think. Well, I'll just say that this
Expressionism.
You all be in the same place.
I'll just say like this idea of the problem of evil only comes about when there's this problem reconciling the fact there's an omnipotent God who is morally good and created the world that we live in, right? So there's those three things. And actually, I wanted to get to my three statements you just mentioned. So let me just hit these last of these four causes of evil. So the third one, using using pain and pleasure versus pleasure only. So there are two things that motivate human beings, pain and pleasure. So pain we try to avoid, pleasure we try to obtain it. And it's both physical and emotional pain and pleasure. And so God could have set up a world where it's just degrees of pleasure. And actually, it turns out that positive reinforcement works better than negative reinforcement. It's better to reward than to punish people. It's more motivating. But sometimes, sometimes pain can keep people from doing things because they fear the pain and want to avoid it. But then sometimes it seems that pain happens, unbidden for no reason or for random actions that happen to you. But God could have said just degrees of pleasure, right? So there are certain things he wanted you to do a lot of. He could just make this super, super pleasurable. Like, eating a carrot would be like having sex, right? It would just be so delicious. And so you eat lots of carrots and then you maybe be healthy and you get enough beta carotene and everything. And Brussels sprouts would be like getting a full body massage. And eating a piece of broccoli would be like, laying out on a warm tropical beach. It would just be the most pleasurable sensation in the world. And eating a piece of cake would just be, it would be like a root canal. It would be like as soon as that cake, like as soon as your mouth closed on that first piece of cake, you'd be like spit it out and maybe like become violently ill, right? God could set up the world like that. But he also could set up the world where just, the cake tastes like broccoli, right? People wouldn't be eating a lot of cake if cake tasted like broccoli, or all the other bad things. So if sugar and fat were not that attractive, people wouldn't eat copious amounts of sugar and fat, and you wouldn't have like massive obesity and diabetes and cancer and heart disease being the main diseases of modern Western countries. And exporting around the world, by the way, too. So like people in Japan are starting to eat like Americans. McDonald's are popping up. Less rice and vegetables, more big slabs of meat and lots of oil. And pretty soon, and now the Japanese are getting fat like Americans. So anyway, God could have used pleasure only and not used pain. So God's omnipotent, right? He can use pain. He doesn't have to use pain. He can use any means he wants. But God decided to create pain and suffering to accomplish his ends.
I think you need one to know the other, though. Like just the way we work with being habitual creatures, like if there was only pleasure, and then we found like the specific pleasurable things, like I'm gonna eat apples, I'm gonna go to sleep at this time, so on and so forth. Like pretty soon, we're gonna stop feeling good doing it because we don't need to feel good to do it to know to do it. Now it's just become so habitual that we no longer exhaust those chemicals to tell us to do something that we already now know to do. Like we're just naturally gonna grab the apple. So like I'm gonna stop having the same satisfaction over a period of time, or to begin to decrease more and more. But if I woke up one morning and ate like a burnt piece of pancake, like the next time I eat an apple, I'm gonna be like, what? I fucking love apples again. Like this is why I love apples.
The contrast can make something more pleasurable.
And without it, I think it would just become so normal that we wouldn't notice that it's happy, because it's just become.
But those would just be degrees of pleasure, right? You wouldn't need any pain. So like I could eat like a piece of dry toast, for example, like some wheat toast or rye toast, and that would be healthy. Carbs are good for you, and that would be great. And then by contrast, I had that piece of chocolate cake, and I'm like, oh, the cake tastes a lot better. Now, it didn't mean I didn't enjoy the toast. The toast may have tasted good, but the cake tastes a lot better. And so if God wanted me to eat more toast because it was healthier, he'd just make the toast taste like the cake. And the cake tastes like the toast, problem solved.
Someone told me once that if God wanted me to drink water, he would have made it taste better.
That's true.
That made me cringe really hard.
I hate drinking water.
Because he was being serious.
I don't trust water. Fish do funny things in it.
I feel like I would eventually.
Oh, let's take our break and we'll come back with the fourth cause of evil.
I would get to a point where I would just make sure everything is at the highest level of pleasure, which eventually would turn into normality, and then
Oh, we're back. All right. So, round two. Where'd my pen go? I was caught unawares. Oh, here it is. So, the fourth cause of evil, and this is lack of powers for humans. Lack of powers. And then especially a work drive. So basically it's talking about laziness. And so this is talking about, let's say in humans, just to be clear here. Lack of power in humans. So what is he talking about? Well, like, you know, some animals, like, you know, your birds of prey, they can see really good. They can see a mile away. They can see a little rabbit run along the meadow there and go grab it. Some animals, they have like really thick pelts that insulate them from the elements. They get big claws to defend themselves and fangs. And what do human beings got? We got ripped off. Okay, well, yeah. So we have the big brain. So that's like one thing. Well, we like ripped off everywhere else, and so Hume says the reason why human beings, you know, have to create culture and civilization and have all these things to protect themselves. We don't have any natural protection. We have to cook up whatever we can to defend ourselves against the elements. Other animals, they just, you know, go around and do their thing and don't worry about it. But we have to adapt and create tools and ways to cope with the hostile world in which we find ourselves. Yeah.
I just read a part of Human All Too Human where Nietzsche was talking about how philosophers tend to like get stuck in a very specific frame, specific time frame of looking at the human, especially like from the time that Hume was analyzing humanity. I think he did less historical and anthropological studies of humanity overall before like using that conclusion. Because like we did have brains, but we didn't always have brains. We had opposable thumbs originally, then we figured out fire. And we went from fire to cooking food, which just like gave us like this insane nutritional boost. We like not only did we waste less energy like digesting food, we got new kinds of amino acids and vitamins that we weren't getting before. And so like it just gave us like this huge brain boost. So we became smarter and became reasoners. Like so like we kind of like once we took fire into our hands, we took our fate into our hands, basically. And like, so the opposable thumb was probably the best adaptation given. Although like, we do see that counter argument and why have the other apes not evolved when they have opposable thumbs.
I use this idea of ecological niches, that there's reasons to evolve. You find your little niche and you get like groups that break off from the larger group and they form different, there's lots of different other forms of man that just fell by the wayside, like the Neanderthals and the Cro-Magnon, and there's like lots of different Cro-Magnon, lots of different forms of man, that Homo habilis that came and went extinct, and we're the ones that made it. And there's a lot of the other things like the cockroaches and fish. I mean, there's lots of lower forms of animals that have found their place, and they've found an environment that they're able to proliferate and thrive in, and so there's no evolutionary pressures for them to change. But for humans, I think humans being a little funny here. And basically saying that we got ripped off when it comes to like, God's handing out powers and abilities, and human beings got ripped off. And then he says the worst thing about humans is they're really, really lazy. So human beings as a whole will follow the path of least resistance. And he said only if God had only imbued every person with a drive to industry, then the world would be a lot better place.
I don't know. We need workers.
And then there'd be so many.
Well, the idea of workers, like we
need people that are capable of controlling workers.
Well, but the managers will work too, though. There's the idea that most people are lazy and will do as little as possible to get what they want. And where there's some people, like Hume was like this. Hume was like...
People do something.
he was like a workaholic. He wrote wrote like a fiend, and he wrote these histories, and then first he tried to be a philosopher, and then his first book of philosophy fell stillborn from the press, as he says. So it's basically like an abortion of a book. And then so so he's like, well, I'll try writing these histories. And he got lots of success as a historian, and his histories are still used in Great Britain today. And then he went back to writing philosophy, but just turned out like a lot of stuff, and was always working. But a lot of people are like, most people will just do what they have to do to get by, and rather than doing their job enthusiastically or conscientiously.
Let's why though, because honestly, for most people, to achieve the things that they want, they understand like the unlikelihood and like improbability of achieving it against like all of these fluctuating social dynamics and corporate and business dynamics. It's like you're kind of like pushed into helplessness, which means laziness becomes like a byproduct of surviving your powerlessness against the preceding standards set by our society, which collectively people find right or wrong. So it's like if I try to deviate from these rules to gain what I want, like I'm gonna be punished, or I'm gonna be powerful enough that I just, like I don't care about my repercussions, and you become one of those like super narcissistic, powerful people that you really want to keep an eye out for. So it's like if people don't have that drive to do that, they tend to like not back down and cause dissonance with everybody else. I'm going to do the bare minimum I have to get what is most likely possible. So now I'm basically going to shrink my view of what I want to get, because the big things that I really want are very likely unattainable. Mm-hmm. And so I really couldn't say that like it's so much that we are lazy. We're lazy as a byproduct of like the fact that our society like limits the amount of people who can get to the top of the ziggurat, because there's only so much room at the top of the pyramid, because it shrinks no matter what.
That seems like a fatalistic view. I don't agree with any of those assumptions at all. It's not the world I live in.
I'd say that's definitely the world I live in. I definitely see how people like would want to achieve a better life, but they realize like I'm never going to be able to afford my own home to have the environment that I want. I'm always going to be stuck living in like this environment to this environment in this kind of neighborhood, to try and progress, and like the overall timeline that's going to get me to get to where I want to be. Like I won't be strong enough by the end of my life to get there, just because of all the consistent loopholes and obstacles we as a species have set up for ourselves in society. Like it's just not everybody can just like go to school and write all these theses and write all these books and then open up their own business. Like capitalism isn't set up for everybody to do that.
You could you could go look in Craigslist, look at
There are lazy people.
people. I'm just saying, you can if you got hustle, you can look on Craigslist and find stuff that people are trying to get rid of, and come pick it up and sell it, even if you're riding the bus.
Okay,
with a free bus pass. I mean,
that only goes so far. You really can't hustle into a sustainable lifestyle. You're always having to be with other people, and you have to start trying to sell things that go really fast, because if you're just trying to sell random stuff on your Craigslist, you have a very limited amount of things you can sell and the amount of people who want that. So if you
it's just for seed money for your business.
And open market, then you're probably gonna let's take an example, because it's a weed state. You're gonna start selling weed, and then you get dictated and controlled by the weed market and how the weed market works. And then only because I've done a bunch of this related type of stuff.
Well, that's the government. There's yet another argument why there is no God, but the thing is, you'd have a food cart, right? There's always rules that the government tries to put on entrepreneurs and make your life miserable, but you could have a food cart. There's this great restaurant called Confusion. It's down near the university. It's on near 13th and Kincaid. It's called KUN Fusion. And it's a hybrid cuisine. It's Korean Mexican fusion, and it sounds really weird, but it's delicious. And this guy started out with a food cart, and then he used the profits from one food cart, get another food cart. He's got 3 food carts. Now he's got an actual restaurant, and he's going to expand some more. And lots of people do it, and you got to have hustle, and you got to work long hours.
Lots is relative compared to how many people don't have a job still. So I couldn't say.
Well, you got to start out with a job, right, and save some money and live below your means. There's
if you're making a 9 to 5 and all your bills cost so much that you don't have that extra, you can't even continue to eat every day, so you really don't have that extra amount of money, and you're still kind of relying on government services. Your best bet is to get a loan, which is only goes so far, and then you got to draft and predict that whole future business and give it to them. They're I'm already ready for this. So now you have to find the time in between your 14-hour shift week to build and research and draft this plan, and then go from bank to bank to bank to get these loans to try to get it. And with your job where you don't really have a big profit to pay them back, they're like less likely to do that. So like you have all these barriers to get to that physical cart. I can't just like go out in the woods, cut down a tree, build a cart, and then set up and start making some food that I picked, which would be very nice. But then I have all these laws. I have to come where did I get the food, where did I cut the food down from? Like was I legal to cut the food down from there? Was I legal to put this vending cart up? Do I have a vendor's license? Do I have the handler's license to serve the food? Am I allowed to be permitted on this premises? So there's like a lot of stuff that just again would show the person ahead of time like this is almost an unlikely possibility to go through. I could spend a year or so trying to get this food cart.
Therefore, there is no God.
No,
you
just again.
You just gave lots of reasons why life sucks, why you can't catch a break, why nobody can get
there is
ahead.
no God, but also people suck, and it's not so much that everybody's.
God
lazy.
allows them to suck. I mean,
Laziness
God
is a
allows
byproduct
the evil corporations
of people.
and businessmen to keep down the working man, right?
No.
That's like
No
the
God,
whole
so,
Marxist
like,
thing, right?
It's just
The
people
power
doing
structure.
that for power. People do it for power, for sure.
Yeah, so I tell you,
Everyone
you know,
has
it's
their own
like it does
specialties.
take several years to get like a business going, and you do it in steps, and you know, food's not that expensive. We live in a land of plenty where you can eat on very little. Or you can live it takes very little. Like you look at like the evolution of economics too. It used to be that you had to work from like sun up to sundown just to create enough wealth to be able to create food, shelter, and clothing. And now it
Feel
just
that
takes
way.
a couple hours of minimum wage.
Not really. I mean, like a couple hours for like a couple hours at home worth of energy. Like I'm working 80 hours a week and then sleeping the rest of the week with food in between in order to maintain that. There's so many people who can't get outside of that 9 to 5 because they're trapped by how much they make in relation to how much they have to spend to survive. So we're still kind of in that same circle. We really haven't left. You just have a little bit more comfortability with it than you do. It's not any different.
Well, I'd say like I mean, you're now. I'm actually making. I think you're making my case for me that the world we live in sucks and that God doesn't do anything about it, so it's on Him. But I'd say like this: most people are living in poverty because of either there's like so if you get, I don't know, there's like the certain things you can do that can like screw up your life, but basically you get like any kind of job working 4 hours a week at minimum wage, and you know, and you'll be above the poverty level, and you'll have money for luxuries, and particularly in Eugene where the property value, the rents aren't that high, and you can own your home. You can own your home working a minimum wage job for your entire life, particularly if you're like living with other people.
I mean, considering all the states I've been to and like the extreme, like what would I call it, habitual.
It's really cheap. It's really cheap in Florida. Florida has really low property values.
Yeah, but they also have way
Sure.
too high of job turnover rates. They also fire people a lot. There's like inconsistency in how long a job will remain, and then like negative work ethics in the job. So I mean, like it's a give and take. It's a give and take.
I feel like we're getting a little
Usually, people
feel here.
have 2 or
maybe.
3 full-time jobs in Florida to maintain the ability to live comfortably. And I mean by paying.
Depends on what your
bills.
skills are, but then you like work on your skills. You get a night
Again,
school, you
that's
come to
going to
community
school,
college.
and then you have to
Yeah,
doing,
it's an
like,
investment.
live off of school. So like now I don't have any luxuries. Like now I
Yeah.
literally take what I get from the school, pay bills, and then come here.
Well,
And,
Hume
like,
would admire you. Hume would say you have a work ethic.
I have a desire.
But you-
which is
I'm-
what
you know other
abstains
people around
from
here
my
are lazy,
laziness.
right?
So laziness is
Yeah.
a response from a lack of desire because people realize like what I desire is unattainable given the circumstances.
Well, and what about these other people that make it? Like, is there something magical about the guy that's running his own restaurant on the food cart? You know, he started from nothing. I know lots of people
I
that
think
start
they're
from
less
nothing.
sympathetic. I think they're more ruthless. They don't care about hurting other people. They break the rules. They don't follow the rules. That's the biggest thing. They don't follow the rules of society.
This guy's like super nice, and he gets all his permit, and he
Broke the
like
fucking
he
rules,
has like a
yeah.
really good, he has a creative idea, and he started out, you know,
It
with
sounds like
if he started out pleasing customers, found out what they want, created something that people loved, and had a good product, and you know, built on its success through lots of hard work and ingenuity.
Ooh.
Huh? This is a guy that runs Confusion. You should check it out sometime. It's awesome.
I mean, like that's not a very big, and he's really just living over the poverty line. He has a comfortable living, but he's like, I call him middle class, I don't call him upper class.
It's milky, so you
Or
got to
upper
employ some
lower
people.
class.
The same thing happened with the guy that started, what is it, Chipotle's, right? The guy just started out with a food cart, and then he had like opened a restaurant, and then pretty soon it's blown up, and the IPO, and then pretty soon he's like a billionaire, right? It's maybe not pretty soon, but you know, over like decades, and now he's like a billionaire.
So
right?
now also let's count how many companies we have like that, and then compare that to how many people are on the planet today, and then how long those companies have been around, and then add the numbers. Let's subtract the number of deaths per year from the first company to the next company, and that'll be the total amount of people alive during the times of these businesses. And then we'll compare how many businesses and people have made these businesses singly versus we even grew.
Well, it's competition, but he's also providing value for other people in terms of
A lot
jobs.
is a very small word compared to how many people across the globe will never see that future.
Well, I
Never
mean,
see
that guy did it right, and the guy had a lot of hustle, and the guy had a great idea, maybe got lucky, right? But
Again,
like everybody else can
that
have some
he
kind of
wouldn't
form
have
of
been able to do that.
success.
Like the system's not set up for everybody.
I feel like we're getting into like the economic questions.
I mean, I'm saying that those people aren't so much of their special cases, but those cases preclude the negativity of the other cases.
You think that people are lazy purely because they're demoralized, that there's nobody that thinks like, well, if I really apply
I think it
myself,
started
maybe I
that
could.
way because it's become so common and normal that as kids growing up in such environments see laziness being so common, it becomes a part of them without realizing it, and so they never even begin to have any kind of large worthy desire to push them outside of what they consider poverty.
I know people that grow up in like middle class affluence expect things to be handed to me and handed to them, and they're lazy too, right? I mean, so it's not just like poor people might be demoralized, but like you also get like middle class people and rich people who are lazy too. Like most people are lazy. Most places you're at, people do what they have to get by. They cut corners. They're not invested in what they're doing.
What makes
So that's-
laziness so
and that's just
appealing?
Hume's point, that
So
there's a
on
few
both
people
sides,
who
on
like
both
work
sides.
really hard and are workaholics who have like this big 5 personality trait called conscientiousness.
And we could
If
call
you
it
look at
delusion too, though.
well, if you look at the whole population and you look at how many people are super conscientious, it's a small sliver of the population.
What's
And
the
so that's all
definition of
Hume's saying here.
conscientious?
Conscientiousness is part of the big five personality traits in psychology. And so I mean, they weren't around when Hume was writing, but Hume's basically making this observation of human nature that people follow the path of least resistance, and that people tend to be lazy and do as little as possible to get by. So that's all I'm saying. They tend not to be ambitious, and they tend to set their sights fairly low at low goals and modest accomplishments.
And
And
also
he'd
that
say
was
that's why
social
Do you
people
think
end up
it's
there.
That
because
was
it gets in the way of
socially
their
driven, not
happiness?
But it's a basic personality trait. I don't think it's socially driven.
Like, let's say.
With the rich people on that side.
It's a personality trait.
Poor and all that.
That was
You're
what I was
living
saying.
out in before society and everything. Wouldn't it benefit you to expend as little energy as possible, living,
But not
surviving?
doing that. That's not laziness if you're being rational with your energy. But you're still doing something.
Like-
Laziness would be like you don't accomplish anything. As long as you're accomplishing things,
You're
using
accomplishing surviving, that's not setting your goals there.
So playing video games.
surviving is going out and getting food.
All right, one
Like,
conversation
I go
at a time.
Running around, chasing after animals, I'll exhaust my energy so much, I no longer have the energy to crawl through the bird's nest and get the food. So it's like, I'm playing a matter of numbers here. Like, okay, because I've been restful and rational with my energy as I've been eating little eggs over the time, I now have a bunch of energy to go chase down this like sprained leg gazelle, and I can eat really good now because I was lazy. It was more you were rationing your time correctly and your energy, because you know you have a very limited amount. You get only so much in this time of survival.
But
That
that's-
sounds like an overachiever back then, because you could just live off of just, digging up roots and tubers or whatever.
I mean, in one sense, because we have a lot of gardens, but when there's like wild fruit and everything, you're especially with the clan, you're gonna burn that resource fast. If you just try to like, oh, I found a tomato plant, I'm just gonna start digging all the time. Pretty soon, you and your 3 companions are gonna have dug up that whole tomato bush, and then you have to move on again. If you keep doing this, like that's why when people pick mushrooms, you leave the little mushrooms so that the colony stays there and comes back. If you pick all of them, the mycelium's gonna think it's a bad area, it's gonna stop growing, and then there's still gonna be no more mushrooms again there.
Okay, let me come back to like this question about. I'll give you one more argument for this. So, because you actually made me think of something interesting. So why is it that when you come across an isolated tribe that's been around since maybe like 50,000 BC in the Amazon, that they're still living in grass huts, that they're still using crude flint weapons, that they still believe that the world is full of gods and spirits, They still believe in magical rituals and spells. And they're pretty much living the same way they did 50,000 years ago. Oh, why would that be?
The same thing, they're maintaining their survival. Obviously, all the people who decided not to do that
Why don't they
are
have, why don't
pushing
they have,
ourselves
why don't
to
they have
population and
iPhones?
extinction.
Why don't they have dentistry?
They don't need it to survive. And they're doing
They
a
didn't
little
take
more than
enough
surviving.
shrooms.
They're biding their time. They're not being overly lazy. They're still making sure they still make sure they go and get food. They make sure that they grow their food. They make sure they defend their area, keep their houses clean so they don't have deconstruction and overgrowth back into their area. So they're not being lazy. They just have chosen like not to exploit the
Or maybe it's the
environment.
rituals
What if
that
I
delay
pull
their
out like
progression.
I have
Just
like
like
an
just like with the scientists back in the medieval ages, the Earth isn't flat. Okay, well we're gonna decapitate you because you said that. That's already denied
that might be
science.
part of it.
So you
I'd
could say that those types of societies will shut down any type of intelligent thought just to stick with ritual that they're literally ingrained in permanently.
What I will say is that lack of intelligence seems to be somewhat intelligent in the face of our intelligence deconstructing and destroying our environment where we can no longer live. Our intelligence has basically suffocated itself. Their lack of intelligence has given them like the ability to maintain a flawless society for
I think it's the
50,000
with the
ability-
median with the
years.
median
But I
age
think it's
of,
the ability
30
to
years.
attain
With-
is
with-
what does it. If
but-
they could attain it, then they would. But they can't attain it. We can.
There's a reason, but they have a median age of 30, right? I mean, and they're in perpetual warfare with one another because
Being
of
responsible
their
for changing
superstitious
is
beliefs. They
struggle.
believe that when somebody gets sick, they think that the shaman from the enemy tribe put a hex on them and they go to war and people die. And so like there's people I think they
That keeps their numbers from getting too far to push them out of a sustainable environment. If they just continue to grow and stop killing each other, and they don't have that sense of death, they'll probably get overpopulated in that small little niche they have and burn themselves out. Like I said, you eat the entire tomato bush. So like
Or you
their
can-
death keeps
I
it
it's
balanced.
great if you don't mind dying at 30 or
I mean, for them, I mean, like I think we're just pampered motherfuckers. Because like
Well,
once
I
we
think
raise our children, that's the point. Like we're supposed to reproduce. So like once I raise the children, I really don't have an extreme purpose other than to continue reproducing. Which once upon a time, like I would probably keep doing that because we don't have a lot of population, we have a lot of numbers. But like now that we're hitting that side, like we need to have less and less kids. So like once we have our set of kids somewhat in this like 10-year time frame that we tend to have, like we stop having kids after that. Especially when we hit 40, we just go through our ability to stop parenting children regardless because we're not supposed to continue after a point in time. So like
people have fewer kids now because they have hobbies other than like having kids. Harrison, you had a point.
I lost it.
Oh, so again, I want to bring us back on track. So we're talking about whether there's a God or not, and we're talking about whether the God of the Judeo-Christian tradition of being who's omnipotent or all-powerful is consistent, and who's also all good, is consistent with the world we live in. So God is omnipotent. God is good. And the third thing is evil exists.
I think the way that a society can transcend to higher intelligence is prioritizing different things. So like for those tribes, they prioritize their traditions. I feel like when a society gets extremely overpopulated, you start getting millions and millions of people in these populations, you start to get a lot of different types of people.
Mm-hmm.
And those people seemingly stand out more. So in a large crowd, a very intelligent person is going to choose differently from those people, and whether that society is capable of appreciating those types of behaviors dictates whether they're going to leave that era and enter, the industrial era.
But
and creativity as well.
if that was the case, then like societies would never advance. But like there's a reason why society
But
advances.
there's some that do and there's some that don't.
Right, but the reason for that doesn't have to do with like necessarily the group holding down the individual. Although, I mean that is a cause, but
That
it's
is
not
what
the whole
happens a lot,
cause.
though.
But then why doesn't it happen everywhere?
Because some civilizations see that isn't beneficial.
Why does that happen?
Enough people start thinking differently.
natural
People
selection.
get educated.
This dude had a gene that made his brain work a little bit differently on the thought process, which gave him different insights
Yeah.
than other people had.
He was
And it's
capable of
about
living
them
longer.
accepting those insights.
I
The
think
guy
it
that
is
came up with
important.
farming,
So it is
he lived
important.
longer
I
because
think
of that decision. He was more intelligent.
you make a point that it is like culture matters, and it does matter like how unusual or outlier creative people are treated. And if you have, and this is actually a big reason why, this is why Western civilization brought us the first, the scientific revolution and the industrial revolution.
Yeah.
And part of it, the reason why it happened in Western Europe and not in Asia, is because of the kind of collectivist mindset and this idea of the nail that sticks up gets pounded down.
And some genius came up with a scientific method and introduced that to the world, and enough intelligent people said, finally, someone understands where I'm coming from. And now, since the population is so large, like if there's only 100,000 humans and there's only one that's super intelligent, he's outnumbered. It's hard for him to win. But when you have
he doesn't get
billions
burgers.
of people, there's a lot more of those extremely intelligent people that even now we can all communicate. We can communicate. We can share that common interest, and that's just going to become even more so in the future.
And also, I don't think, like the work laziness is also very specific. Like nowadays, you would consider like some of these tech people, like Elon Musk, would you call him lazy because he sits around all day and walks from meeting room to meeting room, or would
He doesn't. He's like a hands-on guy.
That guy's insane.
He's always
He's
Elon Musk worked all the time when he was a coder and putting together PayPal, and he works all the time now on his rockets and stuff. He's a guy that Hume says, that's the guy's the outlier. He's the unusual guy. He's a mover and shaker that makes society happen, that pushes the bounds of technology. Most people are not like him. Most people are lazy and would rather sit in their ass all day and watch TV.
So really what I'm kind of getting is where I'm sitting on my ass, instead of watching TV, I'm going to watch the screen, but on my screen I'm doing things. And so I'm working, but not I'm not physically exerting myself.
It's a question about whether you're producing something or entertaining yourself. Hume would say work is when you're producing something.
So
Entertainment
now
is something
production to what? The individual, or production to the society? Because then that also becomes, to get circumstantial and relative.
So I mean both. It's something to support yourself, something of value to others, and something that improves your abilities, skills, talents,
So
or
I would
abilities.
say sitting around and thinking about poetry in my head all day, I came up with these great poems. Even if I don't decide to write them down, they give me a sense of levity, which people tend to naturally pick up on. So I just by being lazy and thinking about poetry all day when I walk through my house and make other people happy by my happy state of being, what I have done today is I have made other people happy by being lazy and thinking of poetry.
Yeah, I suppose Hume would say being an artist, that's doing work, and that's great.
I'm not going to write anything
appreciate
down.
it.
I'm just going to accept the poetry for its internal value, and then let that internal value play out in the way that I feel throughout the day.
But you could also just lay there and not write poetry and just smoke weed and eat and just hang out with your friends and go out to a party. I mean, there's people that do that. There's people that do that and get a check from the government every month.
And so we have-
But what if those actions are motivation for another?
To not
We're
fall
gonna-
into that.
They
I
see,
wanna
I
stick
do
with the-
not want to be that person, and that gives them the motivation to become something more.
Oh,
What I
well,
really
that's,
think it is we need to show people that they have the ability to gain, maybe not the world you see in your head, but aspects of that world which you have to learn to integrate. That's what we have to stop this comforting zone and listen, if you want some sense of comfort, you have to introduce this to the world first.
okay, well, I feel like we're I didn't expect to get this much pushback from people who are lazy, but let's talk. So we talked about this the problem of evil, and this is the traditional problem of evil, or the logical problem of evil, and just there's this inconsistent triad, meaning there are three statements which can't all be true at the same time. So it can't be true that God is omnipotent, God is good, and evil exists. So if God's omnipotent, he'd be able to prevent evil. If God is good, he wants to prevent evil, yet evil still seems to exist. Evil, again, meaning, say, the suffering of innocent people, the suffering of relatively innocent people. So then the question is, what about this hangnail I got? So I got a hangnail, and it was kind of bugging me, and it was kind of hard, and so I pulled it off. I'm like, oh, I'll just pull it a little bit. I'll try to cut it off, but I ended up just pulling it off because it wasn't coming off right. And now it really hurts. And in the shower this morning when the hot water hit it, oh, it stung. And I imagine if like I had like some fish and chips and I was pouring the lemon juice on there and I got a little bit of lemon juice on that, I mean, that would really, really hurt, right? Now, I suppose according to some people in this class, what I would do is get like almost like those things you buy in the store, like the lemon juice. It's like shaped like a lemon. I just like pour it on my thumb and like it to sting a whole lot, because then I'd appreciate all the times when my thumb didn't sting and when I didn't have a hangnail.
Also, eventually, it would
I may
stop
give
hurting.
myself some paper cuts
It's not,
too.
it's
And
not
pour
the
some more lemon
absence
juice
of
in my
pain.
hand.
It's not the absence of pain that's good. It's the good that comes
Maybe
rather
the contrast,
than
yeah. Anyway, so that's a tangent. But so the problem of evil literally would be like if the world was all sweetness and light, and then like one day, like, you know, I'm eternally alive and my life is nothing, every day is Christmas and my life is perfect in every way. And one day I wake up, I'm like, what's this thing on my thumb? Oh, I start pouring it. I'm like, for the first time in my life, I experience pain. I'm like, oh, that kind of hurts. I pour it out, it bleeds, and I'm like, hangnail. That would prove there was no God, right? So that seems kind of ridiculous. So people said, okay, well, let's kind of revise this a little bit, because the argument seems kind of weird. So there's the probabilistic version, which just says, okay, well, given the extent of evil, right? Things not just like hangnails, but like people being like burned alive by ISIS. Or I remember maybe I should do this next time. Like I'd come up with like the most horrific headlines I could from like the headlines, right? So I remember there was one term. It was convicted, man found guilty in baby rape. And this guy that raped an infant who was like 6 months old and like videotaped it, right? So that was the evidence at the court. So that's pretty horrific, right? And then there's people like, there's one kid, his dad, there's a custody dispute. So dad decides he's gonna kill his son. So he like douses him with gasoline in the hotel room and lights him on fire. And he looks like kind of like an alien. His skin's like all melted, and he's had to have like operation upon operation and skin grafts just to survive. And they do this thing where they put you like in a bath. So it's like imagine like this hangnail like times like, you know, 1,000,000, where they have to like scrub your skin, otherwise you die of infection. So there's all sorts of, there's people that are suffering every day that are being like tortured in third world hellholes, that are being brutalized in North Korea, starving to death, being tortured, being killed by ISIS, just fill in the blank. This horrible things that happen to people, even in the United States, people that are hungry and homeless, and so on. Anyway, so the idea is that, okay, well maybe like it doesn't have to be, maybe like if there was just a small amount of evil, we might believe in God. But you just like look how bad it is. Like there's this guy, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. He was this rapist murderer that stalked women during the afternoon in suburban California. And what he did was some of those victims, or some that survived, and some of this I think came out from his confessions too. I think most of this came from his confessions. So he would rape and torture women and force them to say that they love Satan. And some of the women would cry out to God to help them. And of course, God didn't do anything, right? He just let it go on. There was another recent case of this meth addict who, he took this, a 9-year-old girl, he kidnapped her and kept him in his closet and had her tied up there and raped her repeatedly, and then buried her alive in a plastic bag with her teddy bear so she suffocated. Right? And stuff like this happens literally every day. Thousands of people all around the planet die in horrific ways or suffer just horrible things. And now imagine you're living in that trailer park with John Cooey, who is one of the guys there, right? So he's maybe I should give him a trigger warning. Anyway, sorry about that. So John Cooey's this meth addict who's raping this 9-year-old girl and finally kills her. Imagine you hear next door, you hear this, somebody help me, I'm being kept prisoner, he's coming back soon, right? and you're like, oh, there's somebody in trouble. Maybe I should do something. I'm like, oh, but the show I'm watching is really good. It's like it's the second season of A Man in High Castle. I want to see what happens next, right? And I'm pretty comfortable on my nice comfy couch. You just sit there and eat potato chips watching your show, right? And then later on, she's found and whatever. And imagine like if somebody found out, or suppose you knew somebody that was their case, like they heard a girl crying for help, but they didn't do anything because they wanted to watch TV and eat potato chips. What would be your thoughts about that person? Be a horrible, horrible person, right? So for any person like that allows something to go like that to go on and doesn't intervene, God's in the same position, right? He could intervene, but he doesn't. So any person that's brutalized, God could have stepped in and said, that's got to stop, or he could have stopped it. And he wouldn't even have to do it, obviously, right? He could...
I would argue that God allows for evil to exist and all these horrific things to exist because something better exists after heaven exists. People that suffer, people that are mistreated. But it only makes sense if heaven exists, because then they would go to a truly better place and they would know once they
But
got
to
there.
go, you'd have to have faith in him, and if all those horrible things happen in your life, you'd probably lose faith in him.
And nobody seems to notice that there's no priority over like, oh man, my whole life, my lunch money was stolen. Like, I get the same rewards that you who got raped for your whole life get. Like,
Yeah.
You got your butt taken, I got my wallet taken. You know what I mean? But we equally get the same prize at the end of the day. Like,
Well, maybe
that
you might
doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, you make a... Well, what about... Here's a question. Could you even make up for that? So suppose there's like a father and he molests his daughter from the age of 3 until she runs away at home at 15. And then he wins the lottery and becomes a millionaire and says, and hands down his daughter and says, daughter, I feel really bad for what I did to you. Here's $1 million from my lottery winnings. It's all I've won, and I want you to have it. So the question is, does that get him off the hook for the 13 years of molestation? Does that make him? Is he still morally culpable for all the suffering that she went through?
Yes.
Okay. What if it's the mother and she wasn't actually doing the molesting, but she knew what was going on and didn't intervene?
Yeah.
So then now what if it's God who knew what was going on and could have intervened but didn't?
Yeah.
So that's the argument. So let me hit a couple of things. We talked about this natural evil. So so natural evil is different from moral
So
evil.
I'm gonna say old age isn't evil because who wants to be immortal?
I do.
Man, you would have such a hard time in life.
I plan on it.
I want to be immortal.
Yeah.
I mean, I do too, but at the same time, like, it's gonna be even harder than it was not being immortal.
Now, going back to your thing about being demoralized, I think it may be that most of the people don't want to be immoral because they don't think it's possible and they don't want to get their hopes up.
Yeah, yeah.
They realize deep down inside they're going to die, and so they say, I don't want to be immoral anyway. Possible anyway.
That's
Yeah.
probably really like.
So for moral evil, though, it's just this idea of intentional acts caused by the human beings, like the rapists and the killers. Apart from like psychos and there might be some people who are psycho or can't control their impulses, but there are lots of people that do bad things to other people with full knowledge that what they're doing is harming those people and realizing it's wrong and not
But I do it
caring.
because they think that they're gonna get something way better in the end, like a powerful conglomerate.
Well, better for them then. But I mean, I think that I just don't think you don't become successful in business by being a psycho. You become successful in business by helping people, offering them a product or service that they really,
I'm
really
gonna actually
want.
have to turn that down, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'm aware of people who make
Yeah.
research chemicals or like fake illegal substances so that they're illegal, and like they're just pumping out fake cocaine and like.
And there was
how much money-
How did that get you geeked like meth, and then like all this fake weed that makes people like eat other people's faces and like out and.
But how much
they're
money? I
making
mean,
mad
it's like
money, but I can't call them moral people. in
so.
society.
This is like, man, those people are doing bad things.
And what if they just donated all that
They're
money
helping
to
people get
cancer?
high and pass probation and pass.
What
piss
do you
tests.
do?
You want to consider that being a good thing? Like I'm not failing my piss test. I'm not going back to jail. That's good, but at the same time, like I am killing myself on such an insanely.
I don't
important level.
believe in the war on drugs, so I suppose I think
Yeah.
that's a good thing. But
Well, this is a little bit different because these are like fake drugs.
Well, the thing is, so there's these two guys that got busted. They're burgling houses, and they had this really great way of doing it. But so they dressed up like Mormon missionaries, and they had like little name tags that they had printed out someplace, and the nice like white shirts and suits. And they go door to door. They knock on the door. If nobody answered, they look around, and then go back to back and burgle the house. And they did this for a while, and they made a lot of money burglaring. If you take that genius idea and you'd only done it to try to actually make an honest living, they would probably be doing really well. But because they've tried to make the shortcut and do something to screw
Some
other
people just aren't intelligent enough.
I was gonna
So I
used to be a
move.
house burglar, not for nothing, I'm sorry, this is not good, but like, besides my drug addicted brothers who kept selling everything, like, I definitely, like, manipulated an abandoned house that was really nice, and then, like, I had such an awesome house that was, like, not paid for, it's 4 bedrooms, like, I was doing pretty well, and then I just, like, I went to jail, my brothers sold everything in the house, as they could.
Yeah. So that's like the risk thing. Like you would be riding high for a while, and then something bad would happen. Whereas like if you go like the long bust your ass the delayed gratification thing, then over the long term the idea is you could have that 4-bedroom house. And then what? But why do you have to go that route? Why is life so hard? Well, it's because there is no God. So that's the argument from the problem of evil. So here's a story to illustrate. This is the book of Job. The book of Job is all about the problem of evil and about these 2 questions. So why do bad things happen to good people? But also, why do good things happen to bad people? So, and people usually think about the first one. They think about some kid with cancer, and they're like, oh, there is no God. But they don't think about like the really bad guy, like Chairman Mao, who died, morbidly obese and celebrated by the culture of China, and he liked raping little peasant girls and was just like a horrible human being. Destroyed priceless cultural treasures of China. Turned China into like a communist nation. Only recently, in the last 15 years, has come out of that, and people are actually earning a decent living. When when the Maoists took over, millions and millions of people starved. Nobody's sure how many died, but he had this cockamamie scheme of creating like an agricultural paradise where people worked the land, and he killed all the farmers that knew actually how to grow things and replaced them with his commie revolutionary types who were ignorant and didn't know a damn thing, and millions and millions, maybe 50 million people, 60 million people starved. Other people were put in re-education camps. So horrible, horrible human being lived a really long life, a life of pleasure and ease and fame and fortune, and died peacefully in his sleep.
So what would that story mean for us today when we're trying to instead of Mao, we have automation. We're gonna have all this awesome, perfect pollination and crop growing, maybe even less monocropping because of this. We're all the bullshit 9-to-5 jobs are gonna be taken by robots, and then what's gonna happen to us? Are we gonna go into camps? Are we gonna get a UBI, universal basic income? When we have nothing left to do, and we have
Maintenance on robots.
Robots.
So there are other jobs that can be done that are more productive and should be done. So
So I mean, I would say it should be done. We need to work harder to make us work less, but only so that way when we have nothing to do, we can redefine what the hell it means to be human besides working. Because I don't think working is a survivalistic technique, and we're supposed to be thriving, not surviving. So I would say that against Hume in today's age, we shouldn't be working.
Technically, we're not free.
We should be
Because if you
creating
don't
and being
work, you
artistic.
starve.
IQ would say there's lots of things you can do that are productive that aren't necessarily mind-numbing, repetitive labor, and that to the extent that the automation removes that, it's good. But I feel like we're getting aside to talking about technology and capitalism, and I just say that does minimum wage seem like such a great job now with the Flippy, the robot. That's what's driving Flippy the robot is the government minimum wage jobs.
To leave on
But-
a note, could the devil be God on vacation? I'm gonna pull a Nietzsche.
Okay, so Job makes a bet with God makes a bet with Satan. And so God's basically bragging about Job, and he's like, look at my servant Job, and look at how awesome he is. And as Satan says, look, Job is just like, Job has all this stuff because you give it to him. And so the reason he serves you is he gets a reward. You take away all of his blessings and he'll curse you to your face. And God says, you want to make that bet? And okay, you're on,
Yeah.
right? So then, and so he says, go do your worst, right? So then Satan comes down and kills all Job's kids and destroys all his possessions. And it doesn't look like Satan, right? So there's like a big, a hurricane comes, like the hurricane destroys his house, I think an earthquake, and then roving bands of nomads come and kill all his cattle. And so he's left with nothing. He's in the ruins of his house. And then he has this famous statement, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, blessed be the name of the Lord. And God says, aha, right? See, I win. And Satan says, that's not fair. He's still got his health. He's like, okay, I'll make a point here. Go ahead and take his health away. So Satan afflicts him with loathsome boils, oozing sores all over his body. And to add insult, so this disease, and so to add insult to injury, he leaves his wife alive, which is another form of punishment. And Job says, life is funny. Take my wife, please. But I'm dumb. So there you go. That's the universal archetype of the nagging wife, right? You should just curse God and die. And there's Job, looking away, trying not to react. So here's the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. I mean, this is after the boils. This is a famous lithograph by I'm blanking out on the name. It's William Blake. I don't know why. See, this is the vagaries of age. You forget stuff. So now Job has these three comforters, in scare quotes. And also Job's three friends say, you must have sinned. You must have done something to tick off God. That's why all this bad stuff's happened to you. And so Job says, but I didn't do anything. And the sort of idea of original sin, that everybody has done something to deserve whatever happens to them, is you don't find that in this book here. And there's this idea that you see throughout the Old Testament that if bad things happen to you, it's because you've done something to tick off God. If good things happen to you, it means that God's blessing you. So throughout all these trials and tribulations, Job remains faithful, but he still wonders, why? Why, God? Why? Why did all these bad things happen to me? I was a good person my whole life. I served you. I worked hard, raised a good family, doing everything I'm supposed to, and then this happens to me. All my kids are dead. My wife's still here nagging at me. I've lost everything, and I've got this loathsome skin disease and boils and sores all over my body. So there's Satan up there talking to God, and there's the wife again, and there's Job suffering. And then God finally answers Job in a whirlwind. And in the book, Job says, if God came down here, boy, I'd give him a piece of my mind. And I'd ask him to answer, why are you doing all this to me? And then God appears. Right? And then Job doesn't know what to say. And then God starts lecturing Job, and you get like 3 pages of the lecture, right? And God basically says, well, where were you when I created the world? Can you tell me how I did it? And after a while, Job just kind of sits there and says, I repent in dust and ashes. I'm sorry. I even opened my mouth and I talked about things. I didn't know what I was talking about. I've spoke things too wonderful for me to contemplate. And so, and then God's placated and gives Job like twice as many kids before. So he replaces all his dead kids with new kids and then some, and doubles all his possessions. And Job lives happily ever after. And so,
but see, then that's weird, because then it says the rich man will never enter heaven, or something like that.
So this is New Testament, yeah. So
Yeah.
let's just stick this for a minute. I mean, we talk about the wealth little later. So, so God lectures Job for daring to question him, but then Job repents and God says, okay, I'm happy and you didn't sin, and so here's your reward, Job. And so that's sort of the idea here is that life is kind of a test, and God's waiting to see what we'll do, whether we'll bless him even when things aren't going our way. So we'll talk some more about whether this is a good answer to the problem of evil, what you think about it, on Tuesday.